Your child is crying. The room is quiet. Your heart is pounding. And you're not in your body anymore. You're flooded with shame and sadness. And all you can hear is, I am a monster. That's what's echoing inside of you. And you replay that incident over and over again. You can see your child's face. You can see their heartbreak. You can see yourself yelling. You cannot stop the replay. And you start thinking about how you're not a good parent and how other people can do this better. And wondering, how did you get this so wrong? How did you become this parent? And that feeling is so real. And today, I want to talk about what happens after the yelling. About the shame, the self-doubt, the criticism, and how you're thinking about how you became the parent you promised you'd never be. But I also want to leave you with some hope. By the end of today, I will give you one simple formula for when you lose your cool of how to come back to yourself, repair with your child, and remember that one bad moment does not define your entire relationship with your child. Parenting can be one of the loneliest experiences because we don't talk enough about what's happening in the dynamic with our kids. We talk about gentle parenting, we talk about emotional regulation, but we don't really talk about what's happening when our child needs something and we're losing control. Because that's often what's happening, isn't it? When you're hearing that voice in your head telling you that you're a monster, that's you losing control and reacting to your child in a way that feels horrible for you because you're behaving in a way that you have made numerous promises to yourself that you wouldn't do. You wouldn't yell, you wouldn't react, you wouldn't get impatient, you wouldn't snap, you wouldn't avoid, you wouldn't slam the door. This isn't just about yelling. This is the aftermath of a really big emotional response to your child, which has caused you to lose control. Because the truth is yelling is only one way. I saying out your child and not speaking to them is another way. Slamming the door really hard is another way. All of these are different ways and they all have impacts on our kids. And I know, and I can hear you asking, does this make me a bad parent? Am I a horrible person? The answer is no. You're not a bad parent. You're not a horrible person. You're a human being that is struggling with their own emotions and their own emotional landscape as they're trying to raise their children. And I think that's really important to remember. That in some ways, and I know this might hurt as I say this, but in some ways, many of the pieces that you're struggling with, where you lose out or you become out of control, are also the ways in which you haven't been parented. Those are the feelings you haven't been parented through. The developmental stages that nobody talked to you, nobody showed you how to do it, nobody walked you through it. Nobody sat down and said, hey, this is how we repair. You were yelled at, you were snapped at, you were iced out. And so you can only do the thing that you know how to do. But because you're here and listening, that means you want to do it differently. So you're already committed by showing up here to do it differently. So that's the first step. The first step, you've already shown up here. So let's talk about the stuff that you don't know how to do. Because the behaviors that you don't know how to do, the things that you don't know how to do, you can't teach them. It's not possible. That rule applies to anything in life, not just raising your children or emotional parenting or being connected. It applies to anything. If you don't know how to drive a car, how can you teach someone how to drive a car? You can't, right? So the only way for you to teach someone how to drive a car is to go and get driving lessons yourself. And when you know how to drive that car, you can then show someone else how to do it. But you can't show them if you don't know. Well, the principle is the same here. If you don't know how to repair with your child, if you don't know how to handle conflict when something big is happening or you're having the big emotional reaction, then how are you supposed to know how to teach that to your child? Were you taught how to handle big feelings? And that's something that I think a lot of children don't know how to do. They don't know how to handle big feelings. For most children, they're not even identified. Parents don't name the fact that their child is having big feelings. So the child themselves can't know that they're having big feelings. You weren't taught how to handle big feelings. And if that's not words, or if that's not a conversation that happened frequently in your household, because children have big feelings all the time, if your parents didn't discuss big feelings with you, then you don't know how to do that with your children. So the key part is learning what is happening with you so that you can manage those out of control moments. Because then when you're so that you don't burst out of control. That's the key part. When you burst out of control, it's because you're triggered. I know. We keep coming back to this. I know, right? Triggers are everywhere. They follow us. I know. It's because you're triggered. And when you're triggered, you lose control. Because the part of you that's being touched inside, the pain, the heartache, the shame, the sadness, before you yelled, something got touched, a wound. Something got rubbed. That wound got rubbed or poked. And when that wound got rubbed or poked, you then reacted and went out of control. And then that big reaction, that massive explosion, like I said, whether that was a big yelling or slamming the door and walking out or icing out your child, those are all big reactions to your child. Remember that, okay? To you might be like, okay, you know what, I'm stepping away and I'm not dealing with this and I'm just going to be quiet and sit in a corner. But to a child, that is complete emotional abandonment. That means they're feeling completely left out and left alone. They feel abandoned. So it might not feel big to you, but it's big to them. Okay. So it's about your trigger. You've been triggered. And the only way to navigate that is to take a breather, and hopefully before you're yelling. I know, it doesn't always happen, right? But to take a breather and go and check in with yourself and see what's happening and get an understanding. What was it that your child said, or that happened at work, or the phone call that you just missed, or whatever it is that triggered you that caused these whole bunch of feelings inside. And whatever those feelings were, they were uncomfortable. And that's the key. They're uncomfortable feelings. You didn't like them, and so you had a quick reaction. And that's why knowing how you feel and knowing how and understanding yourself is key to better parenting, because you react less when your child triggers you. And children will trigger you. They're not doing it on purpose. Their job is to push boundaries. That's what they're here to do. They're here to learn to push boundaries. They're also learning how to navigate environments, relationships, people. All the big things that you're struggling with, they're struggling with. And I come back again to the point that if you weren't taught how to handle it, then they won't know. But the fact that you're willing to learn says a lot. Conflict happens. Conflict is a natural facet of our lives. And I know conflict is harder or feels much more intense when it's with your child. And it certainly is more intense. Because you are not only responsible for yourself and what's happening with you, you're also responsible for the outcome with them. So it can feel really, really, really overpowering. And it can feel, overwhelming. And I think that's putting it mildly, but, I can't really find the right word right now. So let's just go with overwhelming. The point is, when you're having to look after you and look after someone else at the same time, that's a lot. That's a lot. The key is taking a breather, go and find out what's going on with you. Go and check in with what feelings there are underneath. Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling scared? Are you feeling lost? Are you feeling out of control? And process that. Whether that's talking to someone, journaling, you have a whole toolkit. I'm sure you have a toolkit. Use it. Dive in, make use of it. You can always come back to the situation later with your child. You do not have to. You do not have to deal with it right there in the moment. Okay? You can always come back. You can always take space and come back. You don't lose your authority when you come back later. You don't lose the power of your authority when you come back later. You don't lose the power of the impact of your boundary when you come back later. I know a lot of parents think that if I don't do it right there in the moment, and if I don't do it fresh and live, that they're going to forget and the child's not going to remember and the impact will be the same. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. On the contrary, when you are calm and more regulated, the impact is far more powerful when you're on a child who's also regulated. rather than two people being upset at the same time. Because a lot of what's happening when two people are upset at the same time, they're not listening to each other. They can't listen to each other. They can't hear each other because you're flooded with emotion. You can't listen to the other person. So when that happens, and when you come into conflict with your child, which you will, it's a natural facet of life. It's not about trying to avoid the conflict. It's about how do you navigate the aftermath. So remember, mom, dad, it's about you also navigating your own landscape of stuff. What's going on with you and how it's affecting you. The pause. Here's the 3-step approach for when you had conflict with your child. And of course, it's age appropriate, and what you say is age appropriate. Number 1, apologize. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that I made you cry. I'm sorry. And just name the behavior in front of you. I'm sorry that you're sad. Number 2, I didn't mean to make you feel, and then name what you're seeing. I didn't mean to make you feel sad or scared or lonely or ashamed. Remember, just because you name the emotion doesn't mean you're suddenly putting in a new emotion in their head. They already are feeling that feeling. All you're doing is labeling it. You're just giving them a word for it. But not with, if you don't give them a word for it, doesn't mean they're going to stop feeling that feeling. They're still going to be feeling shame or sadness or heartbreak. If you don't name it that way, it doesn't change that. You, on the contrary, naming it helps them identify it later on for themselves. And number 3, I reacted this way because I was feeling. When you step in and own why you're feeling the way you're feeling, what that does is create the connection with the child that shows that you're human, that you're struggling as well, and that you're trying to figure it out. When I reacted that way, I was feeling upset about something that came from work. You don't have to give all the information. Something that came from work. I got a message from work and it upset me. I'm sad about something else that came, that I saw on TV. Whatever it may be. Come and let me know how it went for you. I would love to hear. And remember, 3 minutes really can change everything. Thank you for hanging out with me today. If this episode resonated for you, then please share it with someone who you think can benefit. And subscribe to The Pause so that others can learn to pause too. For The Pause this week, your show notes and more, please visit www.monisakimji.com.